Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Prodigal Legion signing in for another Pokemon Showdown battle. So this is UU still. I've made a new team, and it has. I don't think this is a new team. I actually do have a new team. I have a Scizor, which is kind of a bulky offense, and Azelf, which is my rocks, my main self-rock lead. Clefable with Unaware in case someone wants to boost their stats, so I can kind of neutralize them. My Latias, which has Psycho Shift and a Choice Scarf, which is kind of weird of a set, but it makes sense in most battles, and you'll soon see in this one why I have the Psycho Shift on it. And my Arcanine, which is a very good defensive wall, and Mandibuzz, we all know and love Mandibuzz. So, without further ado, my opponent has Minior, Milotic, Alolan Ninetales, which is kind of cool. I've never used it. I've never used Minior either. I don't know what these Pokemon do, how they work. Milotic, I guess it has Contrary, makes sense. And Gliscor, annoying as ever, but we'll take care of that somehow. Cobalion, which is something that I'm not used to seeing, but I kind of know how to deal with this thing too. And my opponent has a Latias of their own. So let us get into the battle without further ado. My opponent will send their Ninetales, and I'm pretty sure they're going to set up their Aurora Veil. Yay, Gen 7 mechanics that I know how they work somehow. So I'm going to go for the Thunder Wave to get the paralysis on the Ninetales just in case. I don't know, because it is quite a fast Pokemon, and I do have Scizor, which is kind of slow. So my opponent goes for the Aurora Veil, which kind of resists. No, it actually does resist the special and physical moves onto the opposing Pokemon. So myself goes for the Thunder Wave, and then it goes for the Stealth Rocks to get the residual damage on the Pokemon that enters the battlefield. But in this case, not many Pokemon are weak to it, just Alolan Ninetales. And the rest do neutral damage. So I'm going to send in Mandibuzz, which can take a lot of hits from this Cobalion. Even a close combat will not do too much against Mandibuzz because Mandibuzz is a friggin' beast. And I love this Pokemon so much. It is one of my favorite defensive walls. It is fantastic. It's such a reliable Pokemon. I just love using it. And my opponent's going to send out their Milotic. I'm going to go for the Whirlwind that turn and send in their Minior. And it has the Shields Down ability, which I'm not sure how it works. I haven't really checked it out. But it must be useful somehow. My opponent must have read between the lines. Must have checked something that I didn't anticipate. And I'm going to send in my Scizor because I know it has a rock flying type. And I can deal damage to it with a Bullet Punch for super effective damage, but the Aurora Veil will, halve that damage practically. So my opponent goes with the Shell Smash. I'm very used to dealing with these sets because they have these mental herb things going on, and I'm going to go for a Bullet Punch, which will take my opponent down. I'm guessing that in this form, the Minior is weaker than what has that, that rocky shell around it. Anyway, so in comes Ninetales. It is quad weak to Bullet Punch because Fairy and Ice, and I'm going to go for the Bullet Punch and destroy Ninetales, which is a paradox because Ninetales was never weak to Scizor until it got the Ice Fairy typing. But anyway, my opponent's going to send out their Cobalion again. I, as an idiot, stay in and I take close combat, which crits me, but it won't matter because it proves to be a Choice Banded Cobalion. You'll soon see in this match when I knock it off, but that's much later. I'm spoiling the battle, but anyway. So, I'm going to bring in my Arcanine, which walls Cobalion completely. My opponent is forced to switch, and this is where I pulled a super mega prediction, which is not this turn. It is much later when I actually switch out into my Mandibuzz, and this is where my opponent kind of gets unlucky. You'll soon see why. Now, Milotic can toxic me. It is kind of annoying because Milotic is a special wall and whatnot, and I miss my own toxic, which is horrible. And, well, what can you do? There's not much I can do. My Mandibuzz is almost at full health, and Toxic is annoying and shit. So I'm going to have to send in my Clefable, which can do a lot of damage. No, it cannot do damage. It can take a lot of damage, and that being the Blizzard, which does about 30% exactly. And the Hail wears off. Ninetales is dead. It can't do much. So my opponent misses the Toxic, which is amazing for me because I can go for the aromatherapy, but I knew that my opponent was going to go for the Toxic anyway, so I went for the aromatherapy. So even if they Toxic me, I would have healed to normal, so that wouldn't have been a problem. Now, as Elf here could have been useful, but it's not that useful because it gets a burn, and mine is a physical variant. And it's kind of weird, you know, Azelf is such a tiny Pokemon, and the fact that it has such high physical attack is beyond me, but well, what can you do? I'm going to send in my Latias, which is a Scarf set, which has Draco Meteor, Psycho Shift, Psyshock, and Trick. Now, why? In case I'm dealing with a wall, I can trick my opponent. They will never expect it from my Latias. I'm Choice Scarf, which means that I'm a modest Scarf, which means I can do some extra damage. And if my opponent has a wall that wants to status me, I can go for the Psycho Shift. If my opponent has an annoying set like Gliscor, I can trick them with a Scarf. And if they have something that cannot take a Draco Meteor, I'm going to go for the Draco Meteor and the Psyshock. Now, my opponent goes for the Blizzard. I'm going to send in my Zelf as Death Fodder because it's burned and useless at this point. It already set up rocks. It has no use for me at this point. So we are both 2 for 2, 4 Pokemon remaining on both sides. And I go for the Psycho Shift this turn. This is the turn where I reveal to my opponent the Psycho Shift, and he's so unlucky, so unlucky, and you'll see why I say so unlucky with the Blizzard. He misses once, okay? So I go for the Psycho Shift, I get rid of my Toxic onto the Milotic, I send in Clefable, which can take Blizzards all day long, and he misses again! This is the second Blizzard miss. Oh my god, this is so funny. I mean, my opponent must have been cursing me, but if you see the chat next to me, my opponent hadn't, anything to say. This was kind of a silent match. My opponent goes for the Scald. I really don't care about the Scald because even if he burns me, even if he doesn't, I can witch myself back to full health. And I'm going to send out my, I think, Latias again, so I can, get some health back. And I don't care because even if I get the burn, he has a Gliscor, he has a Cobalion, and I can transfer the burn to those guys with a Psycho Shift, which is Choice Scarfed. And Cobalion will not have a good time dealing with burn. So my opponent withdraws the Melodic. I'm going to send out. No, my opponent sends out their Melodic, their Cobalion for Melodic. I go for the Draco Meteor just in case they decide to go for the Latias. I don't know, maybe predictions. But I think I was going for that Draco Meteor in case that Gliscor came in because I knew that it couldn't take it well. So I send in the Walliest of Wally Walls against Cobalion, which is RK9, which Cobalion can do squat against. And unless it has Stone Edge, which is kind of a problem, but I'm guessing it doesn't have Stone Edge at this point. And Gliscor comes in, and I go for the super prediction. I go for the Will-O-Wisp because there was nothing that Cobalion could do against me. I knew they were going to switch into Gliscor, and that is where I go for the burn. That is where they get burned. They're toxic. Poison heal combo is useless, and they cannot heal back. Gliscor has its attack halved. It is completely useless at this point. Gliscor has been rendered useless. I didn't even have to use a water-type Pokemon. I didn't even have to use Ice Beam on Latias. This Gliscor has been completely trolled by RK9. This is why I say RK9 is such a good Pokemon, because it has the Intimidate, it has the Will-O-Wisp, and a lot of opponents expect to counter RK9, but it's such a bulky Pokemon, it is such a trap for Pokemon that it is supposedly weak against, but it does very well. And RK9 is worth taking the risk against the likes of Gliscor and other Pokemon it's weak against. Even some water types, especially physical water types like the Azumarill, but I haven't seen a Azumarill, especially in UU, and not so much in OU, because of Tapu Lele. So my opponent misses the third consecutive Blizzard in a row, which is very, very unfortunate for them, very unlucky. But what can you do? This is Pokemon for you. And I'm going to take a sip of my sangria because it is Friday night, and tomorrow Fourth consecutive miss of Blizzard. My opponent must have been face palming and smashing their face against the keyboard, but what can you do? So I'm going to take a sip of my sangria because it's Friday night, tomorrow is Saturday, and I do not have that much to do concerning my military duties. So I go for the aromatherapy. Mandapause is cured again from its poison, which is going to be good. Now if I get this melodic out of the way, I can take out the Latias. Because I know it's not going to be a problem as long as my Clefables are on the field. And Latias, speaking of which, comes back in, and, well, I go for the wish, and I can finally take it to my sangria because you know how the turn's going to go. Latias goes for the healing wish. It just dies for some reason. I don't remember what healing wish does. I went for the moon blast because Latias cannot do a lot against my Clefable, but I do get my health back at full. This is turn 32, and Maloric gets, you know, its health back, and it's healthy, and oh well, I'm going to send in my Latias because I don't care. I'm testing my luck. I'm like, you missed a few blizzards in a row, so you can go for the toxic again. I don't give a damn because Lightsport can't get toxic. Cobalion is immune to it. So I'm going to go for the side shot, predicting my opponent to go into the Cobalion, but my opponent misses the fifth blizzard in a row. Fifth. 5 blizzards. 5. If I was good at video editing, I would have added a big huge 5 on the screen, but oh well. So I'm going to send out my Clefable, and my opponent goes for the recover, and Melodic is kind of healed, and it's annoying, and if I get rid of Melodic, then Glycor is useless, Cobalion is useless because Arcanine is in the way. Reserving Arcanine is amazing. So my opponent goes for the Toxic into the already poisoned Latias, which is a problem for them because I cannot get poisoned twice. So I go for the Cycle Shift again. You cannot get healed this time. You are condemned and you are destroyed in the future. And my opponent misses the 6th consecutive blizzard. 8 PP. He fired off 7 blizzards and he missed 7 times. Sorry, 6 times. What the hell? That must have been the unluckiest hacks in the history of unlucky hacks. It's hilarious. I'm sorry, but I know I'm actually a victim of bad hacks. So my opponent goes into their Gliscor. Gliscor is burned. Gliscor is useless, and if I intimidate it, I can take a few Earthquakes with my Arcanine. But my opponent goes for the knockoff. I really couldn't give a damn at this point because they can't do nothing. I go for the aromatherapy. I'm healed from my poisoning. I get my wish. I'm back at full health. Gliscor has almost half, but it may have roost. No, Gliscor always has roost. So yeah. I can whirlwind him away, and my opponent goes for the Toxic, which is annoying because I want my Mandibuzz at almost, or actually not at almost, I want him at full health. And my opponent, he taunts me, which is kind of stupid. I cannot whirlwind him away. So he has Toxic, Whirlwind, I'm guessing Roost, and Earthquake, I guess. That's kind of a silly thing. Anyway, so Cobalion comes in, I switch out my Mandibuzz into Clefable because Cobalion cannot do squat, and I switch Clefable out into Arcanine just in case he goes for the Iron Head, which I resist, which is plus the, yeah, he goes for the Iron Head plus the Intimidate plus the extra burn that I might get on him. So I'm going to go for the Flamethrower this turn. I have nothing to lose, and I'm pretty sure that my opponent will go into their Melodic because they resist the hit, but maybe I go for the Flamethrower, maybe I switch out. Yes, I did go for the Flamethrower. It did do damage. So yeah, that's it. Pretty much we're stalling each other out, and that's the turn. Sorry, I had to respond to my profile on Messenger. Anyway, so Clefable is something that they cannot deal with right now. My opponent burns me. My opponent is poisoned, and yeah, we can pretty much stall each other out. So my opponent goes for another Scald. I go for a Wish, I guess, because No, I go for the aromatherapy. Man, I'm ballsy. So, yeah, I had to actually cure Mandibuzz. So I don't really care if I lose Clefable at this point because it's not that useful. So I go for the Protect. I just reveal Protect in this turn, and my opponent goes for another Scald, and I'm pretty much stalling my opponent out if they don't go for a Recover. That is 24% damage, and that 24% will become 30 against next turn. My opponent takes my Clefable out, but I really don't care because the poison racks up against them. That's 31%. And next turn, if my opponent does not go for a Recover, they practically lose. So that's not a problem. I'm going to switch out my Arcanine into my Latias because I can take anything from this melodic because I'm pretty sure that they must have spent their blizzards away. And my opponent is at 36 minus percent. Their health is horrible. I go for the Side Shock, and it doesn't kill it, which is stupid. My opponent goes for the Toxic, and at this point I cannot Psycho Shift it anywhere. Milotic's dead. And finally, I can deal with the Cobalion and Gliscor. Now, Gliscor here cannot do squat to me because I'm Levitator. And he does have he have a knockoff? I think he does have a knockoff. I'm actually pretty certain that is why I switched into my Mandibuzz. And the Gliscor goes for the taunt onto my Mandibuzz. I really don't care. I can go for the knockoff. They still have the poison orb, so yeah. I go for the knockoff onto it, which is going to kill the Gliscor next turn because of the burn, and Gliscor is out of the way, and that Will-O-Wisp was so crucial. I'm so grateful that I got the burn on the Gliscor, which is fantastic. And Gliscor is out of the way, which means Cobalion is in here, and what am I going to do? I'm going to switch into my Arcanine that checks the Cobalion, and I'm pretty sure that he does have Stone Edge. Maybe he might have been yeah, he does have the Stone Edge, and look, he does 53% damage onto my Arcanine. So what I'm going to go for here is I'm going to switch into my Latias, Mandibuzz actually, which can take a Stone Edge from the Cobalion, and it takes about 29%. It's pathetic because Arcanine should have been weaker. But Mandibuzz has such great defenses. So I'm going to go for the Intimidate, -2 Intimidate on the Cobalion, and it does does much less damage. So at this point, I didn't know what my opponent had as an item, but my opponent misses the Stone Edge, which is not a problem. I stayed in. I didn't really care because I did have Latias with Side Shock and the Draco Meteor, and at -2 attack plus a burn right now. But even without the burn, even let's say Arcanine died, it really didn't matter because I did have the Scarf on Latias, and the Side Shock would have taken the Cobalion down, no doubt, at 30% health. So my opponent is pretty much condemned here. They cannot do squat, and this is where I switch into my Mandibuzz, which can take a Stone Edge, but my opponent misses. This opponent has had a very bad day regarding the misses. So, yeah, miss hacks everywhere, left, right, center, and he just misses. Today must have been a very bad day for my opponent. I felt sorry for them, but oh well. I decided to go for the knockoff to see what my opponent's item is. They do hit me. 11% damage does nothing to Mandibuzz. I do go for the knockoff. I don't care. Cobalion has a choice band, and Cobalion's down, and I win the game. It took about 20 minutes to finish this game, which is very, very weird. But, oh well. It was a good battle. I really enjoyed it. My opponent played very well. My opponent was very unlucky regarding the misses. But what can you do? This is Pokemon for you. When you have very high attack moves but very low accuracy, this is what you get sometimes. Sometimes you connect with all of the blizzards and fire blasts and thunders in the world. Sometimes you miss them. But what can you do? That's the game. It could have been me, it could have been you, it could have been anyone else. So I hope you guys enjoyed this battle, and I will see you guys in the next one. I'm going to be finishing with one battle because, this has been a huge battle. 61 turns, as you can see on the upper left of your screen. And, well, what can you do? So, I'm going to see you guys in the next battle. Hopefully, I will be out tomorrow. I'll be home 79 days till I finish with the army. 79 days today. So, time goes by so slowly, as Madonna would say. So, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.